bienvenida a todos los que están participando de este encuentro de rezonificación. Va a haber interpretación al español y para poder acceder a la interpretación tienen que fijarse en la barra de abajo donde le va a aparecer un globito con la forma del mundo. Tienen que hacer clic allí y le va a aparecer la opción de lenguajes o de interpretación idiomas, y ahí tienen que hacer clic y escoger español para que luego ustedes puedan estar escuchando todo en español en forma simultánea.
Thank you, Nicholas. And I will call the meeting to order and conduct a roll call. Committee Member Bogner.
Present.
Committee Member Gator.
Present.
Committee Member Holt.
Present.
Committee Member Mallard.
Present.
Committee Member Claudia Marshall.
Present.
Committee Member Phil Marshall.
Present.
And Committee Member Settles.
Present.
Thank you. And the first item on the agenda is nomination of chair and vice chair. And for context, we pushed this item off from the last meeting and also threw around a few ideas on how to handle it. And then I did get feedback from some committee members after the meeting that they would like the item to reappear. So I have it on tonight's agenda. And so if you all are ready to do that, how that would work is someone would nominate a chair and someone else would second it, and then we would conduct a vote. There can be multiple nominations for a chair, so we would take them in order that they are made. And then there would also be the same process for a vice chair. And the role of the chair is essentially to operate as an MC and to kind of guide us through the agenda. And I can, whoever is nominated as chair, I can work with them following this meeting to make sure that they're fully prepared for the role going forward. And I'm, of course, always available to step in and help when needed. So if you all are ready, we can take a nomination for chair if anyone has one. Claudia, I see your hand raised.
Yes, I'd like to nominate Marin as chair.
Okay, is there a second on that?
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. With telecommuting rules, we do have to do a roll call vote. So I will call each of you again, and then you can provide a yay or nay vote. Committee Member Bogner.
Yay.
Committee Member Mallard.
Yay.
Committee Member Claudia Marshall.
Yes.
Committee Member Gator.
Yes.
Committee Member Phil Marshall.
Yes.
Committee Member Settles.
Yes.
And Committee Member Holt.
Do I get to vote for myself?
You do.
You can vote no.
Yes, I'll take it. Thank you.
Okay, so Committee Member Marin Holt is now the chair of the Redistricting Advisory Committee, and I will now take a nomination for vice chair.
I, Michael Settles, would nominate Paul as vice chair.
I'll second that.
Okay. Committee Member Bogner.
Yes.
Committee Member Marshall.
Yes.
Committee Member Phil Marshall.
Yes.
Committee Member Mallard.
Yes.
Committee Member Holt.
Yes.
Committee Member Settles.
Yes.
And Committee Member Gator.
Sure. Yes.
Okay, so we now have a chair and a vice chair. Congratulations, and I will work with both of you following this meeting to make sure that you have all of the tools necessary to fulfill those roles moving forward. The primary purpose of tonight's meeting is a public workshop on mapping and legislation, and we have Shalise from NDC here who will go through that presentation for you.
Hey, good afternoon, commissioners. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. I'm going to go ahead and start the PowerPoint here. will say this, one thing about this process is there's a lot of repetition, and it's intentional because people will join the process at various stages along the way. So by the time we start getting to actual maps, you will know this very well. And I just apologize for it being a little bit repetitious for you. This is your second time seeing it, but you'll be seeing it again next week. As I mentioned before, the process for redistricting is guided by the Fair Maps Act that is found in Elections Code section 21600. And it does prescribe a series of meetings that must take place. There must be a minimum of 4 meetings four public hearings, at least one of them before maps are drawn, and then at least 2 of them after maps are drawn, and there's a floater in between. But in addition to those 4 meetings, the city made the decision to appoint this committee, this Redistricting Advisory Committee, to gather input from the public on the composition of districts and to also propose draft maps for the council to consider. So here we are in the workshop phase of it, and our jobs today and next week are to solicit input on the communities in the city. So which communities should be in a single district for their fair representation, and which maybe should be in multiple districts. So we'll be getting into that. Then we'll have 2 more hearings on August 26th and September 2nd. And then most of you may have heard that today the federal census, and I will say it's 4 days earlier than what you had expected, released raw census data. It's important to know that that data is in what is called legacy format. It's often referred to as the IKEA of data, meaning it comes in a box with all these parts and pieces that have to be put together. The state believes it's going to take about a week for it to reformat and put all that into a usable format where it can begin its work. And when I mention its work, what California must do, and it's the California statewide database is the entity that does this, they must zero out all the state prisons and reassign those prisoners to their last known home addresses. Then they will recalculate the census numbers based on that zeroing out the prisoners and reassigning them to their homes addresses. And then they will release those official numbers. Once that's released to us, or to all of us, then there is a 3-week mandated waiting period before the city or the city's demographer can release any maps. So between now and that time, we are having tools available so the public can start drawing maps based on estimates because the census data is so delayed. We're hoping to get maps submitted by the public and hoping to have those by October 28th. So that will give enough time for people can start drawing maps now and then just fine tune their maps to match what the official census data shows, because we know the estimates will not be exactly right on. This committee will be reviewing draft maps November 8th and December 16th. There'll be more workshops for the public input on those maps. And then, as I mentioned, the city council has to hold a certain number of hearings. City council has to hold 4 hearings total, as I mentioned. One of those can be conducted by this committee. So that leaves 3 that they must hold. January 19th will be their first time to discuss draft maps. And then this committee will hold more workshops after the council has weighed in on those draft maps. And then there will be a hearing on February 15th for the city council, and with the ultimate adoption on March 15th. The deadline to adopt the final map is April 17th, 2022. I scoured this page because I knew there was a change I needed to make, and it was that 2021 date. It just kept missing me. My apologies. It's April 17th, 2022. We must follow laws when we're drawing the district boundaries. First are the federal laws, and this has not changed. We must have equal population based on the most recent census data. And then, as I mentioned, the state of California has an additional law that requires us to zero out state prisons and reassign those prisoners to their home addresses. We also need to draw lines in manners that don't violate the Federal Voting Rights Act. Often that's referred to as cracking or packing, meaning you can't draw lines where you would pack all of your protected class citizens into one district to dilute their effectiveness in any other district. And also you can't crack a geographically concentrated area of a protected class group so that would also dilute their effectiveness in a district. Additionally, there can be no racial gerrymandering, meaning you cannot draw lines solely based on race. Instead, race can be a factor, but not the predominant or only factor. So we will encourage you to also look at other factors that define that community, such as a shared history, shared culture, perhaps shared language spoken at home, shared social networks, other factors other than race that define a community. We're looking at the second column. This is the criteria that's spelled out in the Fair Maps Act. The Fair Maps Act prioritizes this criteria. It's important to know that this prioritized criteria did not exist when the city created its districts a few years ago. So this is new. And in order of priority, the criteria are: 1, geographically contiguous, meaning in most cases, a single district will have one single solid border. Second, undivided neighborhoods and communities of interest. So if there are geographic areas that have concentrated areas of folks that share the same socioeconomic interests, those should be kept together if it makes sense for their fair representation. 3, easily identifiable boundaries. We're talking about major streets, waterways, railroads, highways, mountain ranges, those types of things. Something where you could just actually verbally describe your boundaries. And then compactness. So in the case of compactness, doesn't necessarily mean you have a perfectly square shape, but it does mean that you haven't bypassed one group of people to get to a more distant group of people. And then you cannot draw maps to favor or discriminate against a political party. After we've met those first 2 criteria, the third column is optional, but it's often considered in redistricting. So again, keep in mind, you must follow the federal laws, you must follow the state laws, and if all those are met, then you consider minimizing those voters that are shifted to different election years. So each district is assigned an election year presently, and you have voters who are assigned a 2022 election year, and they're expecting to vote in 2022. When we adjust the boundaries for population balance, some voters may be shifted to a different district, and we want to minimize those voters that are shifted from a 2022 year to a 2024 year, because that will have meant it will have been 6 years since they were able to vote for someone on council. Another consideration that is optional is respecting voters' choices and continuity of office. So in this case, we're talking about if we're able to meet all the other criteria, and if we're able to draw a line, so as we avoid head-to-head contests between incumbents, we will present that option. We want the voters to choose who is in re-election and who has not, rather than us combining incumbents into one district and saying, now you can only vote for one. Another factor we considered is future population growth, but again, we must have nearly equal population in all of the districts. It is considered presumptively constitutional to have no more than a 10% deviation in your least populated district compared to your greatest populated district. So there is some room to possibly underpopulated district if you know there's going to be future growth in that district, but just slightly within just a few percentage points. And then preserving the core of existing districts is often another principle that is considered. Again, that's optional. This is a snapshot of the existing districts. And as you'll recall that presently when the cities switched to a by-district system, they chose to have a directly elected mayor, and that is slated to happen in 2022. So there are 4 districts. The council is giving the charge to this committee to weigh in on that model and to consider perhaps 5-district model going back to 5 council members with a rotating mayor. So at the bottom of the screen, when we're telling you what the ideal population must be for each district, that's why there's an option for 4 districts and an option for 5 districts. The first line on the screen is the 2022 estimated total population. This is a number that NDC is estimating what the total population will come in after the state has released their official adjusted census numbers for total population. We believe the total population is going to be about 12,730. If we were to apply the existing district boundaries as they are drawn today to those numbers, you can see that we are well beyond the 10% deviation. You can see there's been growth in districts 2 and growth in district 4. So there will need to be some adjustment of these numbers. Half Moon Bay has a relatively small population. It's one of the smallest jurisdictions that I'm working with. And so these numbers, even though a 36% seems very high, it only takes just a few numbers to throw that percentage off. So I wouldn't be surprised if that deviation is not as great as what it appears here once we have the official numbers come out. So we're not going to get too stuck on that 35.76 deviation, because we're dealing with such small numbers that we see big swings in those percentages with just a few difference in the official counts.
Excuse me, Shalice, is it okay for committee members to ask questions right now? I saw that Phil had his hand up. No? Okay.
I think I would welcome that. I think we would have kind of more of a workshop format, and I think that would be helpful. So yes, I'm happy to entertain questions.
Okay, it looks like he's saying no right now, but if any committee members have a question, feel free to use the hand raise option at the bottom of your screen.
That citizen voting age population is important. The citizen voting age population is those residents who are U.S. citizens and 18 years of age or older, meaning they're eligible to vote. Doesn't necessarily mean they're registered to vote, but they're eligible to vote. This is a category that's often looked at when you're seeing how well the districts have been drawn to comply with the Federal Voting Rights Act of not diluting the voting strength of our protected class citizens. So you recall I talked about the cracking and the packing. So oftentimes folks will look at the percentages of the protected class groups. For example, let's look at the Hispanic protected class group. And you can see that we're seeing some higher concentration of the Hispanic citizen voting age population in District 2 and District 3, and then a kind of a lower percentage in District 4. So that shows us that Districts 2 and 3 appear to be drawn to keep those communities together because they have a higher percentage than the total overall. Here's a color-coded map that shows where the concentrated areas are of our Latino citizen voting age population. And as I mentioned, they're mostly in Districts 2 and 3. You're looking for the green, the yellow, and the pink colors. Those indicate that 50% or more of those citizens who are 18 years of age and older, there's a 50% more concentration of that protected class groups in those colored areas. And we don't see any other concentrated areas of any of our other protected class groups in the city. We can also show color-coded maps by other socioeconomic demographics, showing here some concentrated areas of at least one child at home. So you can see that the lighter colors are showing there were more children at home, and houses that rent. So on the right-hand side, the green again is 50% or more of those households are renters. The purpose of this hearing will be asking for the commission and for those who are participating in the public to help understand what your neighborhoods are. What are the geographical boundaries of those neighborhoods? It's helpful if you actually tell us the physical features, tell us the major street boundaries or the hills or areas around parks or other landmarks, because remember, we need to translate this ultimately to a map. Beyond neighborhoods, there are other things that define a community. Sometimes there are shared economic interests, or certain areas are impacted by certain government policies. We want to hear what those communities are. Oftentimes you will hear things such as flood risk, traffic, public safety, health concerns. Those type of things will oftentimes bring a community together. And if that particular community, does it benefit? Is it geographically concentrated, number one? And secondly, would it benefit from being in a single district, or would it benefit from being in more than one district? We do have a definition of communities of interest, and this is important to know that a community of interest is a population that shares common social or economic interests that should be included within a single district for purposes of its fair and effective representation. So that last part of that sentence is important. It's oftentimes you can define a community of interest, but it may not be to its benefit to be in a single district.
It looks like Claudia has a question.
Yes.
So you're actually, if I understand what you're saying, a community can be in more than one district? It can be split into two neighboring districts?
It can be, if that is the best way for it to have effective and fair representation.
Okay. Go ahead.
One example of that could be, and it likely won't exist in Half Moon Bay, but say you have a particular concentrated Latino community, and so much so that they would say they're in the high 80% of citizen voting age population. Well, would you put them in a single district, or would they benefit from being in two separate districts?
Mm-hmm. Can I go back and ask from a previous comment that you made that I don't quite follow why we have different voting years for the districts? Is that something that's specific to Half Moon Bay or to the state?
You have staggering that it's I only know of one city that, and it hasn't happened to them yet, but all of their council members would be elected at the same year. But that is very common, where your council members have staggered election years, so you don't have a brand new council every 4 years. So that you have some council members who are up in 2022 and some council members who are up in 2024, and your districts align with that.
Shalise, if I could add, Claudia, when you think of our elections prior to districts, we would either elect 3 or we would elect 2. So it's the same, that they're staggered in their 4-year terms, only now we have districts assigned to them. And so that's part of the election sequencing that we'll get to eventually toward the end of this process as well.
Okay, thank you.
We have the city has chosen to make all the maps available for the public to be able to draw maps. And we have different tools for different purposes and different levels of technical skill and interest. We have an interactive map review where you can review the maps that have been submitted, and you can review the existing districts. You can also review census block population data. And as maps are drawn, they'll show up on this interactive review map. We have paper public participation kits where you can draw a draft map. And also we have a supplemental Excel sheet. If you don't want to do the map yourself, you can use the Excel sheet. And then we will have District R, which is a simple draw your neighborhood tool, and Caliper, which is a powerful online mapping tool. I want to jump over. I'm going to just quickly scroll through the tools that are available, but I want to jump over and actually show you the interactive review map and the paper public participation kits because they are available now.
Looks like Steve might have a question before we move on.
Okay.
Hi, I just wanted to ask real quickly, and maybe you're going to answer this, but if you can show the level of interactivity of these tools, especially with respect to, you know, how the drawn changes change the actual percentage breakdowns of the tables, is, you know, how, if you can display how interactive that is. So if we move something by one block, for example, we can tell immediately the impact as that ripples through on a percentage basis and all the other data that you have.
Okay. I will. We don't have the caliper tool or the district R tool available yet. And those will show you, give you more detail about the percentages. There are really only two vendors that are providing these mapping tools, and the caliper, I've been checking with them every day. I've been checking to see if the tool is up yet, and they are quite frankly just overwhelmed because of the census data delay and now the census data release that just happened 4 days early. So I'm hoping to get those tools available, and those I can show you how it can change live by live. If it's something that's of interest to you now, on the website is a video, and I'll jump to the website and show you this, where you can watch the video and you can see how you can look at those different, when you're using those tools, once they're available, how you can check the data. What I'm showing you on the screen now, and I want to point out, is that every map that's submitted, and it doesn't matter what format it's submitted, it can be drawn on a paper napkin, or it can be drawn on a Chamber of Commerce map, or however a map is drawn. If you've used our tools, if you've used our paper kits or our online tools, each map we will take and we will professionally produce. So when we went through the map last time, this is map 106B. Every map will be assigned a number that will be produced. And so they will all look the same. And so it all be treated equally. We don't weed out maps. If a map is submitted and, for example, it's not population balanced, or its districts are not contiguous, we'll still produce that map, and we will just, in big red letters, saying that it's not legally conforming, and for whatever reason it's not. But the reason why we do this is to encourage the public to submit maps, knowing that all their maps are going to be professionally produced for consideration by this body and by the city council. And also it's complete, we don't behind the scenes just say this map is good, this map is not good. We don't make that judgment. It's up for this commission to decide which maps are best. And so that's another reason why we don't assign names to it, because the maps speak for themselves. So either a map fits the community or it doesn't fit the community.
Question,
Yes.
I'm sorry. If an individual submits a map and they want feedback based on the criteria that we are looking at, those three categories with the option being the third one, is that provided to citizens so they get feedback on the maps that they produced?
Once the maps are produced, they will be publicly discussed by this commission, by this committee. And if they've submitted comments with that, if they've submitted comments about their maps, that will also be produced. And then let me show you this next slide. Each of the maps will come with this data. So this data will provide, you can see along the top, this is a 4-district map. And this is based on 106B, but of course this will be, every map that's submitted will have this same information. So it will give percentages per district on each of the categories that you see listed here. And I know it's small for you to see, but one of those again is the citizen voting age population, and we listed out the protected class groups. And then voter registration and voter turnout for the most recent two elections. And then we get down to some of the socioeconomic information, such as age, immigration status, language spoken at home, language fluency, education, the number of children in the household, and housing status, household income. So this is all used in conjunction when you're analyzing maps to see how well the map has done at keeping like similar groups together, because you'll see higher percentages in one of the districts for whatever category you're looking at.
Just a point of order really quick. If people who have raised their hand could make sure to lower it so I don't keep thinking that you have something else to say. And then it looks like Phil's hand has now popped up there. Go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, I've now successfully operated Zoom.
Recording in progress.
Oh, just in time. A question about this demographic summary. What format will you provide it in? Will it be an electronic table or a picture like this, or what?
It's in PDF format with the PDF map.
Are you able to provide an electronic table? Like an Excel tab or something?
Recording stopped.
The Excel sheet is pages and pages. It's very complicated, and this is just one portion extracted for printing purposes. So I can check for you, but that data is not able to be manipulated. So
I'm just thinking if we're going to be comparing maps, we'll want to compare their demographic summaries, and we'll want to do that quantitatively, which means extracting numbers and comparing them. And it'd be easier for us to do that if it's in electronic format.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can tell you it's going to be difficult just knowing how this data is presented. I know what I've done is I've taken, typically it's the citizen voting age population, and I've just taken snapshots of this top part and placed side by side of each of the final maps. So once you've narrowed the maps down to 3 or 4, we can do a closer comparison for you. If that's helpful.
Okay, it looks like we have a bit of a queue, so let's go with Paul and then Steve and then Michael. Am I saying your name correctly?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you. Paul?
Yeah, thanks. Actually, I was wanting to follow up on Michael's questions. I'm not sure I heard the answer, or I'm wondering what it was that she was thinking when she was asking about individual people drawing maps, and then whether there's any kind of feedback on that. And I was wondering, were you thinking that there'd be somebody that would say, yeah, okay, this fits the criteria, or no, this doesn't fit the criteria, or just wondering exactly what it was you were thinking there, Michael, and whether that's still a point that you want to follow up a little bit more.
Yes, thank you, Paul. My concern is, and this sheet we're looking at now, the demographic summary is a really good one, and thank you for showing it. But my concern is I just want to make sure that the expectation of the public is very, very clear. I just don't want people to go through this exercise and then, well, I had a question about my particular map. Why was it not selected or whatever? And how much detail do we give? Do we just refer them to this sheet and then they are to, demise, themselves as to what the resolution is? Or is there an expectation that we as a committee will take the time to explain to citizens when they submit their maps, the criteria that we use, like in this orientation? I just don't want to have expectations not met. I just want to have expectations very, very clear.
Can I come back on that? Because it seems like eventually we're going to end up with something which is a composite of all kinds of different individuals' ideas of what the district map would look like. So, I mean, do we get to a point where we say we're not going to consider person A's map because some of that is represented in person B's or person C's or whatever? How does that work out? And does that satisfy what Michael's getting at here in terms of making sure the public feels like they're being heard?
So when we transition to districts the first time, any members of the public who submitted maps also attended the public hearings where the city council reviewed and considered the maps. And so anyone who submits a map during this process, myself and or Jonathan will reach out to them and make sure they're aware of when the committee will be reviewing and considering the maps. And so they'll be able to join the meeting and hear the discussion as the maps are reviewed. Does that answer your question?
Okay, and then I think Steve, have you had a chance to talk yet?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate what I was asking before about the level of interactivity of the tools, because that will, it's not going to plainly grade people's maps in terms of how well they conform or how even they are. But if we or any of the public are able to actually see the results in real time of movements and changes to the maps, those, I mean, there's a lot of different variables at play here, so it's going to be hard to get them all right, but you may be able to see that what you've done has a higher level of quality or conformance of than something you tried before. So just to reiterate that, and that's why I'm curious about to see how the tools work. Thank you.
I think Phil was up next and then Claudia after that.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we tie off Michael's excellent point about expectations of the public. So I think I heard that there isn't a mechanism for us to attach comments to other people's maps. Is that right, Shalise? We won't be able to go to a submitted map and say, oh, this one looks good for the following reason. It'll just, is that right?
I can tell you what typically happens is once the maps are submitted is typically, it depends on the number of maps that are submitted. But say we get 20 maps. Typically the committee would go through, and when we get that many maps, when I present them to the commission, I will try to group them into commonalities. So for example, we'll get several maps that will treat the north end of the city in one way, or we'll get several maps that will treat the downtown area in one way. So try to group them just so that will be easier for the committee, because ideally what we want you to do is narrow down, if you get 20 maps, narrow it down to 3 to 5 focus maps. So if this committee sees that maybe the north part of the city was treated in one way that this committee doesn't think is appropriate, then those maps would not become your focus maps, and other maps that better met this committee's, what this committee believes is the best depiction of the city, those would rise to the top. So all maps always stay in consideration, but to answer your point, during that discussion, when the committee's talking about it, and typically we start with, and we say, which maps do you like the best as committee members and why do you like them? So you will go through and you'll say, I like this particular map because I believe it respects this neighborhood and does not divide this part, or keeps this group together, or it aligns this community with this community and they share common concerns. So all of that will definitely become part of the record, so that when people are reviewing how the decision was made to get down to the focus maps, they will know, okay, the committee chose these particular maps because of the way that these particular districts were drawn. So that there is that commentary that goes along with the maps once you start deliberating and narrowing it down to your focus maps. And again, all maps will stay in consideration. And then oftentimes, sometimes when the committee is going through it, you may like certain features of one map and you may want to combine them with the second map. And so you'll notice the adopted map was 106B. That tells me that that map started as 106. And then there was some tweaking, some changing the council did. It likely became 106A. And then there was further tweaking and it became 106B.
Mhm.
So that will likely happen throughout this process too. And it will be a very, the process, you will find as it goes along, you start narrowing down your focus, you will want to make some fine-tune changes to some of the maps because you see something in another map that made sense that would fit with the map that you're focusing in on. I hope that helps provide some clarity.
Yeah, I think so. I think that means if you submit a map, everyone will get a number for each map that they submit, and then they'll come to these meetings and they'll listen out for their numbers and see what happens to them. And then there'll be various ways to listen out for their numbers as the process goes on.
Yes, the maps will be listed online. So this happens in every jurisdiction. People that submit maps are engaged in the process. They'll be looking at the maps. So they will oftentimes come up and say, I submitted map 106. And my logic in drawing that map was this, this, and this. Hopefully they've also submitted those written comments as they've submitted their maps, because that's helpful too. Or if they can't attend a meeting, then they'll have those written comments. Sometimes you'll get no comments and sometimes they won't show up, but it will be very apparent when this committee is looking at them. You will see a map and because you know your communities, you know the streets, and it will be apparent to you why a map is drawn a certain way. And there'll be features of it that make sense to you.
I think Claudia was up next.
The number 20, is that a number that you are referencing from a previous, but could it be 100? Could it be 150 maps?
150 would be really unusual. It would be, yeah, it's a lot when we get 30 or 40 maps. Sometimes in communities, we only get 5 maps. I mean, so it just varies at the level of engagement, and it's hard to depict.
And are you referencing Half Moon Bay with those numbers, or generally speaking?
Just generally speaking.
In 2018, we received, I believe, 4 maps from the public. It may have been 5.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And then what will happen is, because I'm sitting here, and I'm sitting here through all these meetings and I'm hearing comments, if the maps that are submitted, we see that there are some maps that didn't reflect some of the comments we heard, NDC will prepare 2 or 3 maps to round out the options, so you have more options to consider.
Okay.
Okay, it looks like Hal might be up next. Steve and Michael, did you still have your hands up from before, or do you have a new comment? No, before. Okay, Hal, go ahead.
I was kind of curious, we're going to develop maps of 4 districts, of 5 districts. If there's a logic for a differing number of districts, are there any actual, limitations, or, is if 6 or 7 districts produced a good result that 4 or 5 districts couldn't, is that open to consideration?
The city council considered you have to have at least 5 council members per government code. They considered would 7 be better in 2018, and their decision was that we are much too small. And their charge to this committee for this process are to submit 2 maps, one with 4 districts and an elected mayor, and then one with 5 districts.
So it's within the purview of the city council. If we raise the question to them, they could consider it and send us back direction.
I mean, if we get to the point that we are forwarding the maps to the city council and the committee really felt like a 7 district map would be more beneficial, we could certainly broach it with the city council. but it would likely be, and Shalice, correct me if I'm wrong, but it would probably be too late in the game because the process of changing that, I think, would put us past the deadline for adopting the district map. The process of switching Half Moon Bay to a 7 council member city, I believe would be, is that correct, Shalice?
Yeah, it would be very difficult. It would be very difficult to meet the deadline.
Is that because it would be starting at a point far down the road from today, that if we had questions like that, we'd better come up with them soon, or because even now it's not practical to even consider? I mean, I understand that in 2018, the council made that decision and we're just sort of continuing it forward, but maybe there hasn't been discussion. And, you know, I just want to kind of understand, you know, can we think out of the box to any extent, or are we very constrained by just repeating the 2018 process and tweaking the numbers and the boundaries a little bit?
That is the council's hope, and that is our suggestion given the tight timeline. Additionally, San Mateo County sent all of the city clerks a letter that their deadline to receive the shape files in order to update our districts for next November's election is April 18th, which is one day after the state's deadline. So we are even more kind of, we need to keep to our tight schedule, but yeah, it's our primary focus should be adjusting the lines that we have now, and then the 4 or 5 district consideration, which is what next week's public workshop is focused on. And if you notice too, you mentioned think outside the box. Our slogan for this process is think inside the lines. So this is one time that we're trying to keep people focused on thinking inside the box for a change.
Thank you.
Okay. I want to get through I'd really like to demo some of the sites. So if we maybe get through that part, and then we may have some more questions after that. The next slides, I'm just going to quickly go through, just give you a snapshot, but then I'm going to jump to the actual tools. The story map will become live. It's not available yet, but it will just, it's just a place to view maps. So you'll be can view the existing maps as they come in, different other districts that may overlap, district maps that may overlap, such as, you know, water district, fire districts, some school districts that may overlap the city. The simple review tool, I'm going to demo that today because it's going to be useful for you. So I'm not going to go into detail. We have our paper maps. I'm going to demo that today. And then our paper map with the Excel spreadsheet, I'll be demoing that as well. District R, I just got an email that a batch of District R's are coming in. I haven't even opened it yet. I'm hoping Half Moon Bay is on there. We're getting these tools in. They're trickling in. So I'm hoping yours will be next. And then the Calipers Maptitude Online, which is the data-rich online one that gives you all that information that I showed you on that demographic summary. As you're drawing the maps, this is the one where you can actually see the various numbers by each of the categories that Commissioner Marshall was referring to, or committee member Marshall. Let me go ahead. I'm going to jump to the website. Are you able to see my screen? The website, okay. All right, I'm actually on the, when you first get on, it opens up the welcome page, just kind of explains the districting process, how you can participate. The schedule shows these meetings that are coming up. Draft maps, once they are submitted, as I mentioned, NDC professionally produces them and they'll be listed on this page. I'm going to skip over draw map. That's where we're going next. FAQs, take some time and read through those. They're very helpful. And then resources. This second one here is my favorite. This from the Asian American Advancing Justice. I think it's just very well written. That gives a complete overview of local redistricting. Let's go to the draw a map. So when we go to draw a map, I mentioned there are paper tools that are available. This part, paper tools with an Excel spreadsheet. This will give you some data as far as citizen voting age population. I will show that. District R is coming soon. Calipers is coming soon. And then the interactive review map, which I'm going to be demoing. Let's start with the interactive review map. I want to show you that. Normally you would just click there. I already have it open. When you open up this screen, what you'll see on the page is this instruction sheet that kind of gives you how to navigate around. So do read it, it's helpful. Right now on the right-hand side, we're showing different layers. And you can see that it's color-coded right now. It's showing the different districts. I'm gonna go ahead and get up a little bit more close to zoom in a little bit here. The thing I want to show you, and the point I want to make clear, is that when we are drawing these maps, we must follow the geography of the federal census blocks. Half Moon Bay has some very unusual census block geography, and some of them are very large. And I know these numbers are really small, and they unfortunately they don't get much bigger as I'm drawing, but as I zoom in, but you can see this very large boundary here is one entire census block. And there's 1,044 people in this block. So all of this must be kept together. Then we talked about, remember, boundaries must be geographically contiguous. So you can see there's two smaller census blocks that are contained within this larger. So these would all have to go together. I hope that makes sense. So when you're drawing the maps, all of this area from Frenchman's Creek down to San Mateo Road would all have to be together. Now right here, this does have an outlet. This isn't completely surrounded by this giant census block. So these could possibly be in a different district if it made sense to, but just wanted to point this out because when you're drawing the maps, it will get a little bit frustrating if you're trying to just pick up, say, for example, this area and all of this giant area lights up because this is one census block. That's how it's drawn by the federal census. We must use their geography because that's the only way that we can ensure we have the correct population as reported by the federal census is to use their geography. Again, you have this particular area. There's two other census blocks, but they're completely surrounded by this larger one. So those will all have to be kept together.
I think Phil has a question.
Okay.
Do any of the map drawing tools do this collecting of census blocks automatically?
When you every mapping tool draws your map by following the census block geography.
Mm-hmm.
So as you're drawing, when District R, you just use a paintbrush and say, I was just painting here. I just wanted to paint this area. It'll paint the whole thing. Same with calipers. It will all draw the entire thing.
And will it get the connected ones as well?
It would leave this island here until you paint it in.
Okay.
But there is a tool with caliper to say whether your district is contiguous or not.
Okay.
So if you accidentally didn't color this in, it would say your district's not contiguous.
Okay. Or maybe we just remember when we're coloring in the blocks, make sure we don't leave any holes.
Right. Mm-hmm. And it will help. It will help to show you. You can see if you get more towards the downtown area, the census blocks get smaller because you have higher density of where people live.
I think Paul has a question.
Okay.
Yeah, just for clarification, is this the census block that we're looking at now? This is the one that we will be using for this exercise, or does it actually change at all in response to the outcomes of the census?
You're right, it will change. This is estimates.
Oh, it's an estimate. Okay.
Yeah, we don't have the official yet.
Okay.
So do we know when the new data will be loaded? The new census data will be loaded into this?
It will be in October.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to come back to this, but I'm going to leave it right now because I want to show you the paper maps, and then I'm going to need to come back to this because it will have relevance. Color those in just right now. Okay. Let's go to back to our spreadsheet, scrolling down to other tools, the paper map only. So we have a paper map that'll give population counts in English or Spanish. I've already opened up the English one with population counts. Recall we were looking at that one large district. And if you recall, these areas were separate census blocks. But we've created this in this paper map. We've created it as one population unit because we know it has to be drawn together. So the way you use this map is you would add up, you would draw your districts and try to add up to get to the target number of 3,183 for 4 districts or 2,546 for 5 districts. So know in advance what your goal is, whether you're doing a 4-district map or a 5-district map. We've also grouped some of these census blocks together because for us to put those tiny ones on one map, the map would not be very useful for you. In some cases, if you don't like where we've drawn these boundaries, you can draw the boundaries where you want them and just let us know what street you divided. But again, once we draw the map, we have to follow census block geography. Any questions on this paper map?
Yeah, Phil?
I guess I had more of a comment really. So last time we had a public comment on the process of drawing maps, and they pointed out that the problem is like the knapsack problem. And so I went and looked this up. It's a thing in math where your goal is to basically put in items into 4 knapsacks such that all the knapsacks are full and nothing's left over. And so it's the same as the districting problem. And it's famously difficult to solve this in math. But in practice, you have this slide of goals, right? Which are essentially rules to the painting game. Like if you're going to make a good map, if you follow the rules that are on your goal slide from the start, then you'll end up with something that's pretty close to solving the knapsack problem, solving the districting problem. So do you recommend that people have a printout of that goal slide as they start drawing the map so that they're on the right track from the beginning?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's helpful to look at those concentration maps. Some of the toolkits, the calipers, you can actually engage those concentration maps. So you can engage the English spoken at home or the like your Latino citizen voting age population. You can actually have that shown on the caliper map as you're drawing it. And the demo map, the demo video shows you how to do that.
Just to follow up on that quickly, something that I use with my students every semester to learn about the concept of redistricting, the USC Annenberg School has developed a game called the Redistricting game. It's by the USC Game Innovation Lab, and you can play all different scenarios of redistricting, and it builds in all the data for you, and it's a really great way to practice this. So if you want to have some fun with that game, I would recommend it just to get to know the process a little bit. I think Michael is up in the queue. Michael, I think you're still on mute.
I thought I heard that the languages that are available are English and Spanish. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And what about people that need other language options?
It's available on the district website. We don't have it translated for the map, for the instructions on the map.
Michael, if anyone,
I'm sorry, I missed your.
If anyone did request that this be in another language, I'm sure that we could get these instructions translated into that language.
Okay, thank you. And then another question too, for those residents that want to, use a computer to do it as opposed to a hand-drawn map, would we just be referring them to the local library to get the use of a computer, or are we providing, computers to the community, especially in a COVID environment, or they're just on their own?
Yeah, they would just use their own computers or go to the library. I know that occasionally some of our senior center residents will use the computers there to participate, but we would provide the paper kits around the community, as well as make sure that we're advertising the electronic ones as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Steve.
Shalice, just a point of clarification. You mentioned on the map, you said something to the effect of, if you don't like the, where the borders are drawn, you can redraw them. But then, of course, we are, we're aware that we have to conform to the census blocks. So what is it exactly that we redraw, and what is it that we can't?
Thanks for asking that. Let me demonstrate. So let's focus in on this area right here, this 266 number. I'm going to switch over to the interactive map. On this interactive map now, I can show the same population unit, the estimated population, the same map. I'm going to zoom in. Here's that same area right there.
Well, can you pull it up a little higher on your screen?
Does that work? Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right. Say I want to. Also, now I'm going to activate on the right-hand side the census blocks. And you can see that this particular block is made up of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different census blocks. So if I wanted my line to go along Correa Street, but in the map, it didn't go along Correa Street, I can just say, I can just draw on my paper map saying, okay, I want to cut this along Correa Street. So I would draw my boundary to follow Correa Street. I hope that makes sense. I'm still following.
So just to clarify, like, you can't draw a line that would, for example, split a census block into 2 different districts, is what you're saying. You can move the lines around and move a census block from one district to another as long as it's contiguous, but you can't split a census block. That's what you're saying.
That's correct.
Okay.
Now,
can you, the map we're looking at right now doesn't look as though it's actually interactive. You said you can go back to your paper map. Do we have a tool that actually allows you to sort of click and drag borders and see those changes reflected in real time?
Yes, you will. District R.
Okay.
And Caliper does that. You draw your
Okay.
map. Mhm.
But you just
And
can't demonstrate that tonight because you don't have real data yet.
I could, yeah, I could demo it on a different site.
That's fine. That's I just wanted to make sure I understood. Thank you.
Mhm.
Can I just ask, is there one census block that actually is broken, kind of in the center of this map, a little, that upper yellowish one that extends into the purple? Well, it's a little to the right of your mouse pointer. Yeah, there.
It's that it does look that way, doesn't it? I can tell you what happened, and this could be the reason why, is the federal census redrew the census block geography. So it doesn't exactly, now the census block geography doesn't exactly match the map any longer. That could be the case here, right where you're pointing at, right, the one that you pointed out. Also, it is possible for a 0 populated area for us to split it out. Let's go to our base map. Let's see if we can see. I'm changing just the description here, zooming in. But what they did is they made census blocks larger. So this does not look like it's a commercial area. It does look like it is residential, but that is likely what has happened, is that now with the new census geography, this is no longer a census block on its own.
So it'll have to be changed.
Right. If that's truly the case, that's what it looks like. And that was very perceptive of you, which is encouraging. Sounds like you're tracking along with what we're doing here, which is, I'm going to take off just showing the census blocks, and that looks exactly what has happened. We were able to split some census blocks if there's 0 population. We try not to do that, but that's easier for us in court to say, well, this is 0 populated. We split it, therefore we can still be assured that the population didn't affect the population. But this is clearly not a 0 populated area. So it looks to me like this is one of those cases where the geography changed.
Phil?
By geography, you mean federal map?
The federal, yeah, the federal census block geography.
Okay. I think Phil was up next, and then Steve.
Well, actually, my question is, it needs us to be looking at the map, but it's more of a question for Jessica than Shalise. So maybe Steve, do you want to go first if you want to ask about blocks and things? Okay. Thanks. Can we zoom into the south end of the map, please?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, right where that green sticky outy bit is.
Mm-hmm. Six people.
Yeah, so I think there was some confusion about this the last time. So just to confirm, that bit that's sticking out, is that Moon Ridge or not? It's
not. Moon Ridge is just outside of city limits. This is a very small census tract. I think, is it 6 total voters? Shalise, yes. Is that what you said? Yeah, it's very small.
Okay, so
but
just
no,
to be clear,
Moon Ridge would be just below the green.
Got it. Okay, so the 6 people who live south of Miramontes Point Road are in a census block and to be counted, but the residents of Moon Ridge won't get to vote in the next election.
No, they're within unincorporated county. Yeah, they're not within city limits.
Thanks.
I'm sorry, does that mean they don't get to vote at all within the Half Moon Bay election process?
No, yeah, Moon Ridge residents have never voted in Half Moon Bay elections. They vote in San Mateo County. So they vote for Board of Supervisor.
I'm sure it's outside the purview of this committee to include Moon Ridge in the Half Moon Bay city limits, but maybe it could be a recommendation.
Yeah, not as part of this process, but it's certainly, something that the city has considered in the past and may consider again in the future, but it's not really up to us quite much either. So yeah, but for this process, we do not include Moonridge, no.
I guess it would be fine for people who live in Moonridge to contribute to the process by submitting a map then.
I believe so. I think we only got maps from residents in the last process, but I don't believe that we have any restrictions that map submittals be submitted by residents, but it would certainly, I think, hold more weight if it was an actual Half Moon Bay resident. Meaning, I could go submit a map to a city in New York, right? But are they really gonna, how much value might they place on what I say there? But yeah, I believe that they, we try to include we reach out to our Latino Advisory Council and ALAS and all of that when we do a lot of our outreach. And I'm sure that, they make sure that they're included in all of our processes. So if any of them did want to participate, I'm sure we would welcome that. Yes.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Okay. All right. Let me get to, I want to show you this population unit numbers. So this is different. You'll see instead of having the population counts, it's all numbered 1 through, I think it's 40. Let's look at the bottom of the screen here. Yeah, I think we go as high as 43. So these are the population units. So once you've drawn your map, and say you've drawn you've drawn these population units 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in one district, then you can open up an Excel spreadsheet and put in those counts. And I'm going to switch over to the Excel spreadsheet. Can everyone see the Excel spreadsheet? So the first tab, look at the bottom here, there's instructions, assignments, and results. This is just instructions on how to use it, but assignments. So say that those numbers those population units numbered 1 through 8, I put in my district 2. Let's say I'm assigning that district 2. I'm going to say just put an assignment of district 2 next to 1 through 8.
Could you shift it over to the far left so we can see the?
I can make it bigger, I think. Let's see here. But it's going to stay over to the left, unfortunately.
Sorry, Paul, I think I missed your hand there. Do you have a question or comment? I think you're still on mute.
Yeah, thanks. It's about the census blocks again, Marin. So I think we should deal with this first, and then maybe we can go back.
Okay, once I've made my assignments, I say, okay, when I drew my map, those population units that are numbered 1 through 8, I'm assigning them for my district 2. I wanted just a word of caution. This is your Excel spreadsheet row numbers. When you're assigning, make sure you're always looking to the right. Don't accidentally say this is my population unit 10 and assign, make sure you're looking at these numbers. Population unit 5, I assigned to district 2. Now I'm going to go to my results page, and I'm going to look at my how I did on district 2. So my district 2, this is again the spreadsheet for 4 districts. It shows that I have 502 people more than what I should have put in that district. So I'm probably going to have to make some adjustments. But when I'm looking at my citizen voting age population and say I want to look at a particular category for my Hispanic, I can see that I am at 22%. So 22% of those adults living in adults that are U.S. citizens living in that district are Hispanic. Once you build out your whole entire map, of course, all of this will be filled in. So that's limited information, but this does give you some information on the citizen voting age population, the voter registration, and the number of voters. So that's a quick view of, oops, let me switch. I'm switching now back to my screen. So that gives you a quick view of the mapping tools, the paper kit tools, the paper kit with Excel spreadsheet. And if you build out your entire map and you're using the Excel spreadsheet, you don't need to even submit the map. You can just submit the Excel spreadsheet if you like. And then coming soon will be the District R and the Maptitude. This District R training video, it's a short video, but it's useful, and you can go ahead and go in there and watch that video. Same with calipers. Watch the this demo, this redistricting demo. It will give you an idea of the different data that you'll be able to see as you draw your map and how you'll be drawing your map. If you really want to dig deep and play with these maps, you can. The city of Vallejo has their mapping tools. It's planvallejo.org, planvallejo.org. You can play around with it and draw some maps using the caliper, which will be the same tool that you have, or the District R. Let me get back to our PowerPoint here. Whoops. So that completes the review of the tools. And then at this point, I'm happy to answer any questions about the tools. And then, of course, we're wanting to hear from the committee, hear from many members of the public, identifying, different neighborhoods. What are the boundaries? Sometimes it helps to start with what the existing boundaries are, what works with them, what doesn't work with them, or you can start with a blank map, whatever your choice is. And just wanting to get that testimony, because that's going to help us guide us in how to draw maps and how to evaluate the maps when we hear what the boundaries are of particular neighborhoods. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen unless you want me to show a particular slide. Is there a preference, Chair Holt? Do you want me to leave the presentation up, or?
Shalisa, is it possible to get this emailed to committee members after, so we can just have this somewhere, or is it already posted on the website somewhere for us?
We'll do both.
Thank
I'll
you.
email it to you, and we'll also get it posted to the webpage.
Great.
I just noticed, by the way, it wasn't altogether clear to me. I'm sorry to jump out of turn here, but I think this is going to answer a question for a number of people here. What Shalise was just showing on the website is actually live under drawhmb.org. And so all of those tools, including the video, I just started playing the video. I didn't realize what she was showing, because she said that some of the tools aren't live yet, but the demos and things that she was showing are live. And so maybe, Jessica, you can include that link if you haven't already. I may have missed that, so that we can all go back and play with those things that Shalise was showing us.
Yeah, of course, we'll do.
And when you get this, this draw a map right here, that's a live link too. That takes you to, when you get this PowerPoint email to you, just know these are live links as well, all throughout.
I think Michael has a question also.
Shalise, I just want to give you some feedback. This was very, very helpful. So thank you for going through each of the variations, and also, just showing the linkage and so forth. That was very, very helpful, because I was trying to imagine in my head how all of this would look. And my assignment to myself is to go on, as Steve has indicated, to just go on the document and just play with it a little bit. But you're walking us through it was of help. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
All right, Paul.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to clarify the census blocks because I got confused as we were talking through them. So am I correct in assuming that the physical boundaries of the census blocks as they're currently drawn do not change? It's the numbers within them that will change as a result of the census. Or what I thought I heard, which was that the boundaries of the census blocks could change as a result of the census. So can you confirm which one is right, Shalise? I can see Steve nodding his head too.
Yeah, well, both are actually accurate, but we already know what the new geography is going to be. So what was reflected in the interactive map viewer that I was showing you, that's reflected on there already. Let's see,
so that will, sorry to interrupt, that will not change.
That has already changed from 2010.
Okay.
So what you saw in the interactive map viewer is the 2020 geography. We got the geography in advance.
Okay.
So we have the geography, and then you're absolutely correct. The numbers will change from those estimates that we have plugged into when we get the official.
That's helpful. I mean, the concern I had was that the boundaries would change, and so people could be working on maps between now and October, and then find it was a waste of time because the census block had moved.
No, we have the
so that's not going to happen. Okay. Thank you very much.
I have a question too before we move into the next part, and it goes back to, I think, something Michael was bringing up before. And how do we as committee members bring as many voices into this process as possible? Because right now there's 14 of us, and it looks like there's probably 6 members of the public then attending the meeting. And this can be a difficult time for, people with families or, people who just don't have access to sitting in a meeting in the evening. How do you recommend, I guess, Jessica and Shalise, to bring as many voices as possible? Because I can sit around at my own house and make maps all day, but that's not representative of my community. And so I would love some advice on that.
So regarding the evening meetings, we do have, I believe, 1 or 2 Saturday meetings scheduled later in the process. And it's, making sure that everyone knows they can submit maps, they can submit comments, they can email suggestions to me. We're also likely going to create a survey regarding the, should it be 4 or 5, and should the elected mayor be 2 years or 4 years? And then we also will likely send out a communities of interest form as well, so that we can get those people that are unable to attend in person, we can still get their input into the process. And so it would then be, when each of those tools are live and, the mapping, it's sharing those with your networks and making sure that your communities and your neighbors are aware, and, if they'd like to participate, that then they're able to.
Thank you. So you guys are doing the outreach, and then you'll bring that information back to us so we can be better informed.
Right. Yeah. We sent out we did a news release for the advisory committee that went out on Monday. And then we sent out a special e-news blast yesterday regarding this meeting. We put it on social media today. Next week's meeting, we're going to be doing the same thing minus the news release, but also putting a display ad in the review and getting KHMB and CoSide Buzz to cover it as well. And so it's when you see those communications coming out, then sharing those with your own networks as well.
Great. Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, Hal. And then Michael, did you still have your hand up from before, or do you have a new question? Okay. Hal, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm curious to what extent the city might have gathered feedback about citizens' satisfaction with the results of the process in terms of the way districts came out, the way the election worked last time, and has the city, done any surveys or solicited information or comments in advance of this process starting this year? That might be shared with the committee if there is such information. And then I also, I want to come back to something which, I kind of came up a little bit in the first meeting too, which is, this process, is very bounded. And I keep trying to imagine, what the reason was that the city was placed under the, the impetus to go to district elections, and to what extent we're kind of fulfilling the purposes of that, because it seems like there's not a lot of flexibility in terms of what kind of outcomes can be produced, other than people in a few streets being represented by one person or another. But there's a great deal of demographic similarity to all of the districts, and I thought that the challenge was to create more diversity on the council. Maybe it's not an easy thing to say that there's a solution to.
Well, regarding your first question, we did not conduct any type of, community satisfaction survey or anything like that. We, of course, over the years have gotten questions from the public that we've answered. When ballots came out, we had a lot of confused residents as to why, they didn't have a council member, election on their ballot. And so there's been a variety of communications over the course of the years back and forth, but there was no formal survey or anything like that done that I could share with the community. I would say that probably just the main issue is trying to figure out how to reach as much of the community as we possibly can. And that's really the struggle, is not everyone is signed up for our e-newsletters. Not everyone reads the review. Not everyone, follows our social media. And so it's really branching out and trying to reach all of the different community groups, reaching out to the school district, the homeowners associations, the senior center, the library, the chamber, and trying to get all of them to help us amplify the message so that we do reach as many people in the community as we can. And so if you were kind of to ask about, what the thoughts of the process were, I would say that it's more just increasing awareness is what the main goal needs to be. And then the reason we transitioned to districts was we did receive a demand letter from an attorney that we were in violation of the California Voting Rights Act. And what they mentioned was that the Latino population in Half Moon Bay was underrepresented. Our first district election, we did get a Latino council member. So to answer your question, if it created more diversity, it appears that it did. And so I think, does that answer your two questions?
It answers a considerable amount, thank you. Although, I think that, having, lived through many years here of seeing, persons of ancestry that had no, constituency of similar ancestry on the council, that I would hope that we're seeing the election of the most qualified and capable people, and that that's also what was in play.
So I think in the interest of time, if there's no more questions, we should probably move to public comment if nobody has anything else right now.
Actually, I have one question, and this is really for Jessica. It seems to me that we really need to be physically together when we start looking at maps and our individual maps. And when can we anticipate that happening?
So we are still working on hybrid technology for our city council and planning commission meetings. The governor's executive order that allows for teleconferencing currently expires September 30th. With the Delta variant, kind of roaring its head right now, that may or may not get extended. But the plan currently is that starting in October, the meetings would be in person. And for this committee, I would likely also try and use the hybrid technology, but we don't have any meetings scheduled in October. So we'll have these 4 meetings on Zoom the next 4 Thursdays, including tonight. And then our next meeting in November would be in person. And that would be when you were starting to review maps. So.
Okay, thank you.
That works out nicely. It seems like we can move to public comment if there's no more commentary or question from the committee members.
I would just like to counterpoint to Claudia's point. I don't necessarily feel as though there would be a need for us to physically be together to review maps. I think if we're all in the same physical room, it's likely that those maps would be projected in some way on a PowerPoint or on a screen or something. And I don't know that this is going to be any different than that. So I wouldn't necessarily think that there would be any sort of limitation given what we've been able to accomplish so far in this modality. I mean, it would be nice to physically be together, but I don't know that it would necessarily impact our effectiveness.
To your point, Steve, I think once we all have time to play around with the technologies a little bit, we'll see that maybe that is possible.
Yeah.
And that USC game is lots of fun. You should play around with that to get some practice just before we're doing the real thing. It's a good kind of primer on the whole situation.
Thank you.
Okay, Jessica, are you able to call on members of the public? I can't see that.
Yeah, so our first public speaker is Sarah Polgar. Sarah, go ahead.
Hi, can folks hear me?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you. I really appreciated the presentation and the discussion, and I have a hopefully very quick, simple question. I was already looking at the Draw HMB website, which is really great. And I wondered, I heard you say that the interactive review map reflects the 2020 census, the new blocks. And I was wondering if because there's a paper map that goes along with the Excel spreadsheet. And I was wondering if that also already reflects the new map census block geography as well. That's all I had.
And the answer is yes.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Next we have Bill Balson. Hi, Bill, are you there? You're muted if so.
Sorry about that.
There you go.
I have a technical question for Shalise. I remember from 2018 that there's a lot of data variables that get mapped into each of the census districts, but their source comes from 2 different surveys, one being the census and the other being a periodic economic survey that the Census Bureau also conducts, but is not the census. And the areas that latter survey covers apparently is a different geographic definition than the census districts themselves. And so there's sort of an averaging or mapping technique from one to the other. Can you describe that, and if it's the same as it was in 2018?
Yeah, so what you're speaking of is the American Community Survey socioeconomic data that we use. And that is a survey that is conducted by the Census Bureau that gives us more detailed information about socioeconomic related information about
rental rates, for example, or from that survey.
Rental rates, language spoken at home, number of children spoken at home, number of children at home, multifamily dwellings versus single family dwellings, household income, all that type of information. And that comes from, you're exactly right, the American Community Survey. And we do receive, and then there's also the special tabulation that gives us the citizen voting age population for each of the protected class group categories, the relevant class group categories. We disaggregate all that down to the census block level. So all things would be disaggregated down to the block level. So they're all at the same geographic unit.
But the averaging is, by the nature of statistics, if the region for the American survey is, for example, if it covers 8 census blocks, you're necessarily going to have to just average it down by census block. So the average is the same, even if the physical reality is different.
That's correct. That's correct.
Any other comments, Bill?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any other hands raised. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to address the committee or ask any questions? Okay. Roy, go ahead.
Hi, Jessica, I sent you an email with my comments. So I'd like to just refer to my email. So perhaps you could pass that around to NDC and the committee members. Thank you.
Did you, Roy, did you send that just now?
About 10 minutes ago.
Okay, I don't have it yet. I'll email you if I don't get it here in a bit.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, I think that may be it for public comments. Chair Holt.
Okay, thank you. I don't know what the next thing on the agenda is, except that we have our next meeting next week, I believe, August 19th at 7 p.m. I want to thank the city staff for your night meeting time here, and Shalice for a great presentation. It looks like Hal has one more comment.
Oh, I just wanted here in closing, Marin, to thank you for doing a great job chairing the meeting. So you made an excellent choice, and you know, it's great having everybody's here and everybody commenting. So it's a great group, and thanks to the staff and Shalice and Jessica. Thanks.
Thank you, Hal. I've learned a little bit by teaching on Zoom over the last year. Been a lot of Zoom time, so. Thanks, everybody. I guess we'll see you next week, and have fun playing with those maps.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you. Good night.